At 14 minutes past 2 in the morning, my appendix ruptured. The pain dropped me. 1 second I was standing in my bathroom, and the next I was on the cold tile floor with my knees pulled up to my chest, and I knew exactly what it was, because I see it for a living. I'm an ER trauma nurse. I have stood over 100 people on the worst night of their lives. I just never figured I'd be one of them, alone, on my own bathroom floor, with nobody coming. I called my mother 17 times. 17. Over the next hour and a half, while something inside me was tearing itself apart, I called my mother 17 times, and she sent every one of them to voicemail. And then, at 21 minutes to 4 in the morning, my phone finally buzzed. Not a call. A text. Reagan, stop being so dramatic. Your sister's baby shower is tomorrow and we are not doing this tonight. Take some ibuprofen and go to bed. Quit trying to make Bailey's day about you. I read it 3 times. I had to be sure those were the words my own mother chose to type while I was dying on the floor. I barely made it to the hospital. And on the operating table, my heart stopped. For 41 seconds, I had no pulse at all. They had to shock me back. When I finally woke up, 3 days later, the doctors told me they'd kept me in a medically induced coma to protect my brain after the cardiac arrest. And they told me one more thing that I could not make sense of, lying there with a tube in my throat. My entire hospital bill, every dollar of it, had already been paid in full. By a man I had never met in my life. My mother never came to find out if I was alive. She came 2 days later, to pressure me into asking the doctors to discharge me early, because my staying in the hospital was, and I am quoting her, getting expensive and complicated. What my mother did not know, what she had spent 20 years making sure I would never find out, was that the stranger who paid my bill had been quietly watching our family since the day my father died. And that everything she thought she had buried forever was about to come up out of the ground, in front of everyone she'd ever lied to. My name is Reagan Foster. I'm 25 years old. And this is the story of the night I called 17 times, and the man who finally answered. If this is already hitting somewhere close to home, do me a kindness before we go on, tap that like button, and subscribe if you haven't, because it's what carries stories like this one to the people who need to hear them. And drop me a comment. Tell me where in the world you're watching from, and what time it is for you right now. I read every single one of them. Now stay with me, because to understand the look on my mother's face when she saw that stranger standing in the hospital hallway, you have to understand a St. Christopher medal that a dying man pressed into another man's hand on a mountainside in Afghanistan. You have to understand $400,000 my father left behind. And you have to understand exactly how a mother can look at her daughter's name lighting up her phone 17 times in the dark, and choose a party. There's a turn coming in this story you will not see until it's right on top of you. So don't go anywhere. Let me tell you who I am, so you understand why that night was its own special kind of nightmare. I'm an ER trauma nurse at Cumberland Memorial in Nashville. 5 years on the floor. I have triaged more bellies than I could ever count. I know what rebound tenderness is. I know McBurney's point, that spot low on the right side that lights up like a struck match when an appendix is about to go. I know the whole road, step by step, from this is just a stomachache to this is a surgical emergency, because I've walked patients down that road with my own 2 hands and handed them off at the hors d'oeuvres. So when I came awake at 14 past 2 in the morning with a pain like somebody had shoved a hot fire iron through my lower right side, the trained part of my brain knew the answer before the scared part of me wanted to hear it. I tried to talk myself out of it, the way we all do. Maybe it's something I ate. Maybe it's a cramp from the gym. Maybe if I just lie still it'll pass. By 2:25, I couldn't stand up straight. By 2:30, the pain had me dry heaving over the sink. And by 2:35 I was down on the bathroom floor with my phone in my hand, and I was no longer a nurse who knew exactly what was happening to her. I was just a daughter on the floor who wanted her mom. My scrubs were hanging on the back of my bedroom door. I was supposed to work a shift in 2 days. Funny, the things that go through your head. But right then, none of that mattered. I dialed my mother. Voicemail. I waited 2 minutes. Called again. Voicemail. 3 minutes. Voicemail. I called my stepfather, Greg. Voicemail. Back to my mother. Voicemail. I'm trained to stay calm when everything's falling apart. I can run a code with my voice steady and my hands sure while a stranger's heart quits under my palms. But there is a thing that happens when you are the patient, when it's your own body coming apart and it's 3 in the morning and the phone just rings and rings and rings, that no amount of training touches. You start to feel very small. You start to feel like a child. I kept calling. Call number 8, around 2:56. Mom, please. This isn't a stomach bug. Something's really wrong. Please pick up. Call number 13, 20 past 3. Mom, I'm not being dramatic. I need help. I'm scared. Please. Call number 17, around 3:38. I couldn't even make words anymore by then. I just cried into her voicemail and hung up. My phone showed 17 missed calls to Mom. It showed 0 missed calls from her. And then, at 21 minutes to 4, it finally buzzed. I told you what the text said. I want you to sit in it with me for a second, the way I had to. Stop being so dramatic. Take some ibuprofen. Quit trying to make Bailey's day about you. A baby shower. That was the thing standing between me and my mother that night. My sister's baby shower, set for the next afternoon. My mother had looked at 17 calls from her own child in the dead of night and decided the most important thing to protect was a party with balloons and a diaper cake. I was still staring at the screen when the next wave hit. It was different. Deeper. Sharper. Something inside me let go all at once, and I felt a spreading warmth low in my belly that I knew, clinically, exactly what it meant. The appendix hadn't just ruptured. The infection was loose now. Free in my abdomen. Peritonitis. And after that comes sepsis, and after sepsis comes shock, and I knew from the inside of that floor, that I had maybe 90 minutes before this turned from an emergency into a body bag. I'd transported people who waited too long. I'd seen which ones came back and which ones didn't. I grabbed my keys off the nightstand. Dropped them. Picked them up. Dropped them again. My hands weren't working right, that's the shock setting in, your body pulling the blood toward your core. Third try, I got them in my fist. I thought about calling my friend Danny from the unit. She'd have come. I knew she'd have come. But if I called Danny, I'd have to say the words out loud, that my own mother wouldn't come. And if I called an ambulance, my whole crew would hear it over the radio. Trauma nurse Foster, down, alone, at 4 in the morning, no family. I couldn't do it. Pride is a stupid, stubborn thing, and it almost killed me. I'd drive myself. 12 minutes to Cumberland Memorial. I could do 12 minutes. I made it down to my car. Got the engine going. Pulled out onto streets that were dead empty, that 4M kind of empty where the traffic lights are just blinking yellow for no one. And every single light felt like an hour. The pain got so bad at one point I had to pull over, throw the door open, and be sick on the pavement, and then I dragged the door shut and kept going. I talked myself through it out loud, the way I talk a scared patient through it. Red light. Breathe. Don't pass out. Green. Go. For more blocks, Reagan. 3. 2. Stay awake. Do not close your eyes behind this wheel. I pulled into the emergency bay at 2 minutes after 4. Threw it in park. Got the door open. Tried to stand. My legs just weren't there. I went straight down onto the concrete. The last thing I heard was somebody a long way off yelling for a gurney. Then the lights went out. I came up for just a moment as they were wheeling me through the doors. Faces over me. Lights streaking by. Voices stacking on top of each other. BP's 88/50, heart rate 122, temps 102. Get Dr. Adeyemi down here, now. I locked onto one face. Gail, one of the night nurses. I knew her. We'd pulled shifts together for years. Reagan? Her hand closed around mine. Honey, can you hear me? Ruptured, I got out. I'm septic. I know I'm septic. I know, baby, I know. We've got you. She leaned close. Is there someone we can call? Emergency contact? I gave her my mother's number. She stepped away. Came back about 90 seconds later, and her face had changed. She's not picking up, sweetheart. Anybody else? My stepfather. I gave her Greg's number. Another 90 seconds. She came back and just gave a little shake of her head. No answer there either. Hon, is there anybody else at all we can reach? And that question just hung there over the gurney. Anybody else? Anyone at all? No, I whispered. There's no one else. I watched something cross Gail's face, pity, I think, the kind you try not to let a patient see. But she squeezed my hand and said, okay. Then we've got you. You're not alone. Except I was. I was completely, totally alone. Dr. Adeyemi appeared above me. I knew him too, trauma surgeon, sharp, kind, the steady kind of doctor you want when it's bad. His face was grim. Reagan. We're going to the ER right now. This is ruptured and you're septic and we can't wait. I tried to nod. The ceiling started to spin. And then everything went white. They told me the rest afterward, because I wasn't there for it. They opened me up at 38 minutes past 4 and found exactly what they expected, a fully ruptured appendix, the whole area contaminated, peritonitis already setting in. They moved fast. Took it out, started cleaning me out, flushing the infection. And then, at 27 past 6 in the morning, the monitor screamed. My heart had dropped into a deadly rhythm. The hospital keeps recordings when there's a complication on the table, and I made myself listen to it later, once, and I'll never do it again. You can hear Dr. Adeyemi's voice, flat and fast. She's in VFib. Charging. Everybody clear. The heavy thump of the paddles. A nurse, no pulse, starting compressions. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Klein, AP's in. Keep going. Come on, Reagan. Adeyemi again, charging again. Clear. Another thump. And then, after a silence that goes on too long on that recording, the monitor finds its rhythm again. Steady. Regular. We've got a pulse, Dr. Klein says. She's back. Time down? Adeyemi asks. 41 seconds. 41 seconds. For 41 seconds, I was gone. There was no me. And the thing that breaks me every time I think about it is the very last thing on that recording. Dr. Adeyemi, his voice not quite steady, saying, that was too close. Get her up to ICU. And somebody try her family again. A pause. A nurse's voice, still no answer, doctor. And then Adeyemi, then chart it. Patient's emergency contacts called 17 times during an active medical crisis. 0 responses. I want that in the record. After your heart stops, the brain goes without oxygen, and even 41 seconds can do damage. So the standard move is to keep you sedated, medically unconscious, for a couple of days, to let your brain rest and heal without burning the oxygen it needs. They wheeled me up to the ICU and put me under. For 3 days, machines breathed for me. I don't remember a second of it. But I've read the chart, because the nurse assigned to me, a woman named Denise, wrote down everything. And what she wrote down tells the whole story without me having to say another word. The afternoon of the first full day, about 18 hours after my heart stopped, Denise charted, patient stable in ICU. Induced coma ongoing. No family contact despite 21 attempts to reach listed emergency contacts. Social work notified. You know what time that was? 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That was the exact moment my sister's baby shower started. While I was lying in an ICU with a tube down my throat, my family was across town at Bailey's place, opening tiny onesies and eating cake off paper plates with little storks on them, and posting it all online. My mother wasn't answering the hospital because she was busy being the radiant grandmother-to-be. The next morning Denise charted again, neuro status improving. Continued attempts to reach family. Mother's voicemail box now full. Left message with callback number for stepfather. And the day after that, beginning to lighten sedation. Patient responding appropriately. Still no family response after 28 contact attempts across 3 days. Highly unusual. 28 times. 28 calls and messages over 3 days, while their daughter lay clinically unconscious after dying on a table, and not one of them picked up. Not one of them drove the 15 minutes across Nashville to sit by a bed and find out if I was going to live. On the morning of the third day, they finally turned off the drip and let me come up on my own. Denise said it's like watching someone swim up from the bottom of a very deep, very dark pool. Slow. In pieces. A little after 9 in the morning, I opened my eyes. The first face I saw was Denise's, and she had tears standing in hers. "Welcome back, sweetheart," she said. "You scared the daylights out of all of us." My throat was raw from the tube. She gave me little sips of water. And the first real question I managed to get out, once I could make my voice work, was the only one that mattered. "My mom?" Denise's face just fell. She pulled a chair right up close and took my hand and sat down with me. "Honey," she said, so gently. "We have been trying to reach your family since the second you came in. We called 28 times. We left messages. I am so sorry. But nobody's come yet." Something broke loose in my chest that had nothing to do with the surgery. "The baby shower," I whispered. Was that yesterday?" "That was 3 days ago, baby. 3 days ago." She'd seen my name come up on her phone 28 times across 3 days. And she'd chosen the party. And then she'd kept on living her life like I wasn't lying in a dark room with a machine breathing for me. Denise squeezed my hand. "You are not alone," she said. "You hear me? I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." And she stayed with me 2 hours that morning, explaining everything, walking me through the recovery, warm and patient and steady, everything my mother had never once been. When visiting hours opened at noon, she said, "I bet your family will be here any minute now that you're awake." I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. That I already knew better. 6 hours later, I was proven right. The first person to walk through my door wasn't family. It was a woman from the billing office. And what she came to tell me knocked the wind out of me harder than the surgery did. Her name was Lorna, and she looked like she would rather be anywhere on earth than standing in the room of a woman who'd just come out of a coma to talk about money. "Miss Foster, I just wanted to update you on your account." I braced myself. Emergency surgery. 4 days in the ICU. A cardiac arrest. I had insurance through the hospital, but it was one of those high-deductible plans where you're still on the hook for a fortune. I'd done the math in my head before she even sat down. 25,000 out of pocket, easy. Maybe more. "How bad is it?" I asked. Lorna actually smiled. "Well, that's the thing. Your balance is 0. I just looked at her. "What?" "My insurance hasn't even." "We didn't bill your insurance," she said. "Your entire account was paid in full. 2 days ago. By a private party. Cashier's check. It cleared this morning." The room tipped a little. That's not possible." "How much was it?" She checked her paper. $94,000. $94,000. I don't know anybody on this earth with that kind of money lying around. "Who?" I said. "Who would?" She looked at the note again. "A Mr. Russell Holloway." The memo line on the check said, she squinted, "For Reagan Foster." Because I gave my word. Russell Holloway. I had never heard that name in my entire life. Lorna handed me a printout. Official hospital letterhead. Total charges, $94,000 and change. Surgery, ICU, medications, the works. And down at the bottom, in bold, paid in full. Paid by Russell Holloway. I don't understand, I said. Who is he? I was hoping you could tell me, Lorna said kindly. But whoever he is, honey, he just took a mountain off your shoulders. The memo mentioned a promise. Does that mean anything to you? Because I gave my word. No. It meant nothing. I had never met a Russell Holloway. I had no idea on God's green earth why a total stranger would pay $94,000 to keep me out of medical debt. But the fact that he had, the fact that a man I'd never laid eyes on had done more for me in one afternoon than my own blood had done my entire life, something twisted hard in my chest. I thanked her. She left. And I sat there holding that paper, staring at a stranger's name. Then I picked up my phone, and I sent my mother a text. Mom. I'm awake. I was in a coma for 3 days. My heart stopped during surgery. I almost died. Please come. I need you. Sent, 11:47. Delivered, 11:47. Read, 11:52. She read it. 5 minutes after I sent it, she opened it and read every word. And then, nothing. I waited an hour. Then I texted my sister. Bailey, I'm in the ICU at Cumberland. Can you please come see me? Read, 12:34. Nothing. And then, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the exact same time the baby shower had started 3 days before, my phone finally rang. It wasn't a text this time. It was my mother, calling. I answered so fast I nearly dropped it. Mom? Reagan. Her voice was clipped. Annoyed. Like I'd interrupted something. I got your text. I've been in the hospital 4 days, I said. My heart stopped. I was in a coma. Yes, I'm aware. The hospital wouldn't stop calling. It was very inconvenient timing, with the shower and everything. I actually stopped breathing for a second. Inconvenient timing. Mom, I almost died. But you didn't, did you? You're awake. You're talking. You're well enough to be texting me paragraphs. A little sigh. You know how doctors are, Reagan. They blow everything up for liability. Now, I'll try to come by this afternoon. But I need you to do something for me when I get there. I need you to ask your doctors to discharge you. You've been in there long enough, and you can recover at home just fine. Mom, the surgeon said I need at least 4 or 5 more days. I had a cardiac arrest. Doctors always say that. It's how they keep the beds full. You're clearly doing fine. Just ask. For me. And she hung up before I could say another word. I lay there holding the phone against my chest, trying to make the pieces fit. The first words out of my mother's mouth, after I came back from the dead, were not "Are you okay?" They were not "Thank God you're alive." They were "Ask them to let you out early, it's getting expensive." She came at 3:45. She didn't hug me. She didn't come anywhere near the bed. She stood by the door with her purse clutched against her stomach, her eyes moving around the room like she was looking for the exit. "You're awake," she said. "Good. Have you talked to the doctor yet? About getting out?" "Mom. Why didn't you answer when I called?" "I called you 17 times. I was dying on my bathroom floor." Her jaw went tight. "I told you. Your sister's shower was the next day. We had 100 things to do. You know how much that meant to Bailey. More than my life. Don't be dramatic, Reagan. You're fine." And that's the exact moment Dr. Adeyemi walked in for his evening round. He looked at me, then at my mother by the door, and you could see him read the whole room in about a second and a half. My mother pounced before he could even ask how I was. "Doctor, I'm Reagan's mother. I'd like to talk about getting her discharged. She's been here 4 days. Surely she's stable enough to recover at home." Dr. Adeyemi's face went very flat and very professional. "Ma'am, your daughter went into cardiac arrest on my operating table 4 days ago. She was clinically dead for 41 seconds. She's been in a medically induced coma and she's still on 4 antibiotics for a serious infection. She is not going home for at least 5 more days. Surely she's stable enough. Mrs. Dale." He didn't raise his voice, but something in it dropped 10 degrees. "Your daughter died on my table. She is not leaving this hospital until I am certain her heart is going to keep beating. Reagan, do you want to leave against medical advice?" I looked at my mother. At the way she wouldn't meet my eyes. At her white knuckles on that purse. "No," I said quietly. "No. I want to stay." Then it's settled. Adeyemi gave a short nod. "I'll see you in the morning." And he left. My mother stood there breathing hard through her nose for a long moment. "Fine," she finally said. "If that's how you want it." She grabbed her purse strap, and she didn't say goodbye, and she didn't say she loved me, and she walked out. And here's the thing I saw, that I didn't understand yet. As she stepped into the hallway, she stopped dead. There was a man standing out there. Tall, gray hair cut military short, standing like a fence post, spine straight, shoulders square. I couldn't hear what he said to her. But I watched every drop of color drain out of my mother's face, and I watched her practically run for the elevator. A few minutes later, Denise came back in looking troubled. "Reagan, honey," she said carefully. "Is everything all right between you and your mom?" I couldn't answer. My throat was too tight. Denise sat down. "In all my years doing this," she said quietly, "I have never once seen a mother ignore 28 calls about her child dying, and then show up and try to get that child sent home early. I want you to know I'm going to make sure nobody discharges you before you're ready." That night, alone in that dark ICU room, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing my mother's face go white in the hallway. The same thing happened when I'd said the name Russell Holloway out loud to myself. She knew that name. She was afraid of that man. Which meant he knew something she had spent a long, long time keeping buried. The next morning, I got my answer. Because Russell Holloway came to see me. A little after 10:30, Denise knocked softly. "Reagan, you've got a visitor. Says his name is Russ Holloway. Want me to send him in?" My heart started going. "Yes. Please." The door opened, and the man from the hallway stepped in. Late 50s, maybe 60. Gray hair, short. Kind eyes, with deep smile lines at the corners, but he carried himself like a man who'd spent 30 years standing at attention. He stopped a respectful distance from the bed and held his hands folded in front of him. "Reagan," he said. His voice was low and easy. "My name's Russ Holloway. First Sergeant, U.S. Army, retired. I'm real sorry to surprise you like this, especially now." He paused. "I served with your father. With Danny." Everything in the room went still. My father. I barely had him. I was 5 when he died. I had maybe 3 clear memories of the man in my whole life, his voice reading me a story, the rough warmth of his hands tying my shoe, the smell of his jacket. That was it. That was everything I had left of Staff Sergeant Daniel Foster. "You knew my dad?" My voice came out about 6 years old. "May I?" He nodded at the chair. I nodded back, and he sat, careful, keeping his distance. "Your daddy saved my life," he said quietly. October of 2006. Afghanistan. We took fire coming through a draw, and there was a blast, and your father put himself between me and it. If he hadn't done what he did, would not be sitting in this chair. Simple as that. I don't understand, I said. Why are you here? Why did you pay my bill? Because 20 years ago, Russ said, your father asked me to make him a promise. And I've been keeping it ever since, whether you knew it or not. My throat closed up. What promise? His eyes stayed steady on mine. Your dad held on for about 20 minutes after the blast. The medic couldn't save him, and Danny knew it. So he spent the time he had left talking. Not about the mission. About you. About you and Bailey. Russ's voice got rougher. He said, Russ, my Reagan's 5 years old. She wants to be a firefighter, 'cause some fireman came to her school. Always running to help somebody, that kid. Bravest little thing. He had to stop a second. And then he said, if I don't make it, you watch over my girls for me. They're gonna need somebody. Promise me. So I promised. And then he grabbed my hand, and he said one more thing. Russ looked right at me. He said, don't let Sharon erase me. Don't let my girls forget who their daddy was. The tears were running down my face and I wasn't even trying to stop them. Russ reached into his jacket and took out a photograph, soft and worn at the corners from 20 years of being carried. He held it out. It was my father, young, in his uniform, holding a baby against his chest, holding me, and looking down at me like I was the only thing in the entire world. Can I keep this? I whispered. It's yours, he said. It was always meant to be yours. The next 2 weeks were a blur of healing and getting ready. Dr. Adeyemi didn't let me out until he was good and sure of me. 5 more days, no shortcuts, no matter how many times my mother's complaints filtered back through the billing office. I'll always be grateful to that man. Russ had already been talking to lawyers. We had a civil case that was airtight, and a criminal one that was even cleaner. In Tennessee, forging someone's name to steal money like that isn't a family squabble, it's identity theft and forgery, and those are serious felonies. But the lawyer Russ brought in, a sharp woman named Maya Ellison, advised we try a settlement first. Faster. Less brutal. And we could hold the criminal charges over my mother's head as leverage. You want 2 things, Maya told me. Your money back, and the truth out in the open. A settlement gets you both, without sending your mother to prison, unless she forces our hand. Give her the chance to do the right thing. If she won't take it, then we file. But Russ did one more thing for me in those 2 weeks that mattered more than any of the legal paperwork. He tracked down my father's old unit. The men who'd served beside Danny Foster. They'd been trying to reach me for years, and every road had been blocked by my mother. They want to meet you, Russ said. They want to tell you about your dad. That okay? Yes, I said, before he even finished. God, yes. So a few days before the dinner, I sat down at a steakhouse with Russ and 2 men named Curtis and Manny and a few others, and they told me stories about my father until I was laughing and crying at the same table. Curtis told me Danny once carried a stray dog 3 miles back to base inside his jacket. Manny told me my dad couldn't carry a tune to save his life but sang anyway, loud, every chance he got. He talked about you non-stop, Curtis said. Called you his little firefighter. Said you were gonna grow up and save the whole world. I broke down right there over my plate. He knew, Manny said quietly. Look at you. Trauma nurse. Saving people for a living. He called it, all those years ago. For the first time in my whole life, I felt connected to my father, not through 3 foggy memories, but through the men who'd loved him, who remembered him as a real, whole, funny, brave human being instead of a tragedy my mother kept in a drawer. And it made me absolutely certain about what I was going to do. The dinner was at Bailey's house out past Franklin. The big one. The one with my father's money in the foundation. 6:30 on a Saturday, come meet baby Owen. Russ picked me up at 6. We drove most of the way in silence. You ready? He finally asked. No, I said. But I'm doing it anyway. He smiled at the road. That's exactly what courage is, Reagan. Your father had the same kind. Bailey opened the door with a huge smile and pulled me into a careful hug, mindful of my incision. Reagan. I'm so glad you came. Come meet Owen. She walked me into the living room, where the baby was asleep in a bassinet that probably cost more than my car. He was tiny and perfect and had absolutely no idea his whole family was about to come apart at the seams. He's beautiful, I told her, and I meant it. Congratulations. Thank you, she said. And then, softer, I'm so sorry I didn't make it to see you in the hospital. Mom said you had a really bad flu and didn't want any visitors. I stopped walking. Wait, I said. She told you what? That you had a bad flu. That you'd call when you were feeling up to it. Bailey's brow creased. Why? And right then my mother came around the corner from the kitchen. The second she saw me, her face pulled tight. Bailey, honey, why don't we get dinner started? Mom, I said quietly. You told Bailey I had the flu? Let's not do this now, she said, smiling for the room. This is a celebration. And that's when Russ stepped through the front door behind me. My mother's face went the color of paper. My stepfather Greg came in from the den, confused, then concerned, then alarmed when he got a look at Russ. Around the dining table sat Bailey's husband Drew, Drew's parents, a couple of Bailey's friends, and 3 of Greg's old Army Guard buddies with their wives. A full house. Exactly the audience we needed. Mrs. Dale, Russ said evenly. We met in the hallway at the hospital. I believe now's the right time to talk about a few things. In front of everyone. Dinner was catered, expensive, perfect on the surface. But I watched my mother's hands shake as she poured the wine. We sat. We made small talk. Drew's father gave a sweet little toast to the new generation. Greg raised his glass to family loyalty, and I almost laughed out loud. Bailey thanked our parents for always being there for all of us. And then I stood up. The room went quiet. I'd like to make a toast too, I said. My mother's knuckles went white around the stem of her glass. To my father, I said, clear and steady. Staff Sergeant Daniel Foster. Who died 20 years ago in Afghanistan, protecting the men beside him. Who left something behind for his 2 daughters' futures. I looked right at my mother. A legacy that somebody in this room has spent 20 years trying to erase and steal. Stunned silence. And then Russ stood up beside me. I'd like to add to that, he said. To Danny Foster, who saved my life, and who made me promise to watch over his girls. I'm keeping that promise tonight, by telling the truth. One of Greg's old buddies leaned forward, squinting. Russ Holloway? The Russ Holloway? 101st? Yes, sir, Russ said. The man, Colonel Ray Buchanan, I'd find out, turned to my stepfather. Greg, you never told me you knew Russ Holloway. We don't exactly, Greg started. That's because my mother banned him from our lives 20 years ago, I cut in. Right after my father's funeral. Because he knew too much about what she was about to do. Bailey's voice was small. Reagan. What are you talking about? I turned to my sister, because she deserved to hear it too. I'm talking about the $200,000 our father left us. 100,000 for you. 100,000 for me. Money our mother stole from both of us. The table erupted. Bailey gasped. Drew's mother put a hand over her mouth. Russ set his folder on the table and opened it, calm as still water. This is Sergeant Foster's life insurance policy, he said, sliding it into the middle of the table. $400,000. 200 to his wife. 100,000 to each daughter, payable at age 25. He passed it around. Colonel Buchanan studied it hard. He knew exactly what he was looking at. This is the disbursement form that released the daughters' shares, Russ went on. 3 years ago. It needed both girls' signatures. Here's Bailey's, real. And here's the one that's supposed to be Reagan's. Drew picked it up. He's a lawyer, and you could see the training kick in the second he looked at it. These signatures don't match, he said slowly. These don't match at all. Because I never signed it, I said. I was in clinical rotations in another city that month. I was never at any notary. My mother forged my name. Colonel Buchanan looked at my mother. Ma'am. That's a serious accusation. Do you have an explanation? My mother's face had gone red and blotchy. This is private family business. Ma'am, the colonel said, and his voice had gone hard. Military life insurance fraud is a federal matter. This stopped being private the second that form got notarized. Russ kept laying it down. Bailey's wedding. $58,000. The invoice. Bailey's house. $82,000 down. The closing document. Both amounts trace straight back to the trust money, 2 months after it was released. Bailey was crying now. Mom, you said you and Greg saved up for all that. You said. We did, my mother started. You didn't, I said. It was my money. It was Dad's money. She tried defense after defense, and Russ took each one apart with another piece of paper. I didn't steal it, I invested it in the family. Bank records showing it spent, not invested. If you'd asked about your inheritance, Reagan, I'd have explained. How was I supposed to ask about something you made sure I never knew existed? We're family. What's mine is yours. Then why did you tell me you weren't my bank when I needed $2,000 for my car, 8 months after you spent $82,000 on Bailey's house? And I held up my phone with the texts. Drew's father, a quiet, serious man, shook his head slowly. Mrs. Dale. These documents don't show a difference of opinion about money. They show fraud. Plain fraud. My mother played her last card, and it was the worst one she had. Daniel would have wanted his money used for the whole family. And Russ Holloway's voice went cold as a blade. Don't, he said. Don't you dare put words in his mouth. I was there when that man died. I heard the last words he ever said. He said, watch over my girls. Don't let Sharon erase me. He did not say, let her rob Reagan to pay for Bailey's life. He said protect her. So that's what I'm doing. Right now. In front of God and everybody. The room was dead silent. Then Colonel Buchanan turned to my stepfather. Greg. Your guard. You know what SGLI is. You know how beneficiary money works. A long pause. Did you know about this? The silence stretched out. And then Greg, very quietly, said, yes. You could have heard a pin drop. Sharon told me when we got married, he went on, not looking at anybody. Said the girl's money was sitting in a trust. Said we should think of it as family resources. I didn't, he stopped. I told myself it wasn't wrong. Colonel Buchanan stood up out of his chair. Greg. I've known you 15 years. I vouched for you to people in this town. This is fraud, and it's a dishonor to that man's memory, and I cannot sit at this table. He set down his napkin, and he and his wife walked out the front door. But I wasn't finished. There's one more thing everybody in this room needs to understand, I said. My voice came out calm. Steady. Steadier than I felt. On the night of the 8th, at 2:14 in the morning, my appendix ruptured. I was alone in my apartment. The pain put me on my bathroom floor. The room was so quiet I could hear the baby monitor crackle. I called my mother 17 times over the next hour and a half, while I was going into septic shock. She didn't answer one of them. At 20 to 4 in the morning, she finally responded. Not with a call. With this. I pulled up the screenshot. And I read it out loud, every word. Reagan, stop being so dramatic. Your sister's baby shower is tomorrow and we are not doing this tonight. Take some ibuprofen and go to bed. Quit trying to make Bailey's day about you. Drew's mother made a sound like she'd been struck. I drove myself to the hospital, I said. On the operating table, my heart stopped for 41 seconds. I was clinically dead. They put me in a coma for 3 days to keep my brain from swelling. Russ spoke, quiet. The hospital called Sharon's phone 28 times over those 3 days. She never picked up. Never came. The baby shower was the afternoon of the 9th. While Reagan was in the ICU fighting for her life, her mother was here, opening presents. Drew's mother looked at my mother like she'd never seen her before in her life. You let your daughter drive herself to the emergency room with a ruptured appendix, so you wouldn't miss a baby shower? It wasn't just a shower, my mother started. There is no event on this earth, Drew's mother said, her voice shaking, that matters more than your child dying. None. I don't care what it was. Bailey was sobbing now. The baby woke up and started to cry, and the whole room was coming apart. Reagan, Bailey choked out. I didn't know. Mom told me you had the flu. I thought you were homesick. I would have come. I swear to God I would have come, I would have canceled the whole thing. Would you? I asked her. Not cruel. Just quiet. Would you really have? And Bailey's silence was its own answer, and we both heard it. I stood up the rest of the way, and Russ stood with me. I'm going to say this one time, I said. I want the $200,000 my father left his daughters. I want it in writing, and I want it within 90 days. If I don't get it, I file criminal charges, identity theft, forgery, fraud, and I sue for the whole amount plus damages. We have the documentation, Russ added. We have the grounds. And we've got a room full of witnesses. This can stay private, or it can get very public. That's your choice, Sharon. My mother stood up, and her voice cracked into something almost pleading. Reagan. Please. I'm your mother. Family doesn't do this to family. We can work this out at home. You stopped being my mother, I said, the night you saw your child call 17 times and chose a party. You stopped being my mother the day you forged my name. You stopped being my mother every single year you spent erasing the man who died so I could exist. I picked up my purse. Russ. Let's go. At the door, I stopped, and I turned back to my sister. Bailey. Congratulations on Owen. He really is beautiful. I hope you raise him to know the difference between what's his and what belongs to somebody else. And I hope you raise him to answer the phone when family calls in the middle of the night. I looked at my mother one last time. You'll hear from my lawyer Monday. And we walked out. I didn't look back. Behind me I could hear the whole thing collapsing, chairs scraping, voices rising, the baby wailing, my mother trying to explain herself to a room full of people who had just watched 20 years of lies fall down around her at once. We got in Russ's truck. He started it but didn't pull out. You okay? He asked. I let out a long breath. And for the first time in weeks, maybe the first time in years, it went all the way down. I'm free, I said. The legal part moved faster than I ever expected. Maya filed a formal demand that Monday. My mother and Greg had a defense lawyer by Thursday, and at first he tried to wave it off as a family disagreement. Then Maya sent him the criminal analysis, what identity theft and forgery carry in this state, and his tone changed inside of one phone call. By the end of the month, we had a settlement. $200,000. $100,000 right away, they pulled it out of a home equity line against the house, and the rest over 18 months. After Maya's fee, I cleared a little over $180,000. I agreed not to file criminal charges as long as every payment landed on time. One missed payment, and the deal was off and the whole thing went to a prosecutor. The first $100,000 hit my account on a Tuesday. Money my father died to leave me. Money that should have been mine 5 years earlier. Money I'd been told flat out did not exist. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and cried for an hour. Not from sadness. From relief. From finally, being seen. I was careful with it, because that's who I am. Some into an emergency fund, because I was never going to be that helpless and alone again. Some to wipe out my student loans, because I wanted to be free of every chain at once. Most of it into a fund for a little house of my own someday, the future they'd tried to spend out from under me. And one piece of it I gave away on purpose. $20,000, in my father's name, to Folds of Honor, a foundation that puts the children of fallen and disabled service members through school. I picked it on purpose. Because the whole crime against me was a stolen education, a stolen future, paid for by a soldier's death. So I took a chunk of what my father left and I made sure it would send some other fallen soldier's kid to college, with his name on it. They put up a small plaque at the regional office. In honor of Staff Sergeant Daniel Foster. This gift made by his daughter, Reagan, who is living his legacy. I went to the little unveiling. Russ stood on one side of me. Curtis and Manny and the other men from my father's unit stood on the other. And when I looked at that plaque, my father's name, permanent, public, where anyone could read it, I understood that my mother had failed at the one thing she'd worked at hardest for 20 years. She never erased him. He was right there. In bronze. With his daughter's hand on his name. Bailey started texting me a few weeks after the dinner. I almost deleted the first one without reading it. But something made me open it. Reagan, I saw the donation announcement. Dad would be so proud of you. I'm so sorry, for all of it. I know you may never forgive me and I understand that. But I need you to know I didn't know it was your money. And I'm going to make sure Owen grows up knowing about his grandfather. I promise. More came after that. Not defensive ones. Honest ones, the hardest kind to write. I never asked where the wedding money came from because I didn't want to know the answer. I let them make me the good one and you the difficult one because it was easier for me. I knew they treated you different. I told myself it was just how you were. I'm sorry. After about 3 weeks, I sent one reply. Bailey, thank you for being honest. I'm not ready for a relationship with you. Maybe someday. Not now. Put it all into Owen. Break the cycle. That's the thing that matters. She wrote back fast. I will. I promise. Take all the time you need. I muted the thread. Not blocked, muted. There's a difference. She had 25 years to choose me and she didn't. Maybe she'll be different now. Maybe she won't. But it stopped being my job to find out. The thing that actually healed me wasn't the money, or even the apology. It was Russ. We fell into a rhythm. Dinner most weeks. Sometimes I cooked, sometimes he did, sometimes we just got barbecue and talked for 3 hours. He gave me my father back, one story at a time, the real man, not the sanitized one. Danny Foster told terrible jokes. Made unbelievable pancakes. Was scared to death of bees but would never admit it. Cried at sad movies and then pretended he had something in his eye. And then one evening, Russ handed me a small box. What's this? Your daddy wore this every single day, he said. I've kept it safe for 20 years. It's time it was yours. I opened it. Inside was a St. Christopher medal on a worn silver chain, the patron saint of travelers, of the ones out on the road. The little figure was rubbed almost smooth from 20 years against my father's chest, and then 20 more in Russ's pocket. He pressed this into my hand on that mountain, Russ said quietly. Said, give this to my girl. So she's always covered, wherever she ends up. His voice caught. I'm sorry it took me so long, Reagan. But here it is. Here she is. Home. I put it on right there. Felt the weight of it settle against my chest, right over my heart, the heart that quit for 41 seconds and came back. I wear it on every shift now. So I'm always covered. So I'm never out on the road alone. A few weeks later, on what would have been close to my father's birthday, Russ took me out to the veteran cemetery, and before we left he handed me an envelope. What's this? Your father wrote it the month before he deployed, Russ said. To be given to you when you turn 25. I've been holding it 20 years, waiting for the day. It's a little late. But it's the right day now. My hands were shaking when I opened it. One page. My father's handwriting. Reagan girl. If somebody's handing you this, then I didn't make it home, and I'm sorrier about that than I've got words for. But I need you to know something, so listen to your old man one time. You are my heart. You were from the second I held you. Don't you ever let anybody tell you you're too much, or too loud, or too sensitive, or not enough. Don't let anybody make you smaller than you are. You came into this world running toward the people who needed help, and I know, you're going to do something good with that. I won't get to watch. But I'll be watching anyway. I promise you that. Be brave. Be kind. Be exactly who you want to be, and don't ask anybody's permission. I love you forever, Reagan girl. Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it up careful and put it in my wallet, where it's lived ever since. He called me Reagan girl, I said through the tears. My whole life my mom told me he never had a nickname for me. He called you that all the time, Russ said softly. She lied about that too. A few days after that, I walked into my charge nurse's office at Cumberland Memorial. You got a minute? I asked. For you? Always. What's up, Foster? I told her a short version of all of it. She listened without saying a word. And when I was done, she said, What do you need? I want to put in for the flight team, I said. Critical care transport. The helicopter. I want to be the one who shows up when somebody's out there in the worst night of their life and there's nobody coming for them. I want to be the person who answers. She looked at me a long moment. That training is brutal, you know that? I died for 41 seconds and came back, I said. I think I can handle brutal. She laughed, and then she didn't, and then she nodded. Applications approved. You start the certification next month. I walked out of that hospital lighter than I'd been in years. And as I crossed the lot to my truck, I touched the St. Christopher medal under my scrubs, and I thought about my father's letter folded up in my wallet. Be exactly who you want to be. I was doing it. I was becoming exactly who he hoped I'd be, maybe even more. On a warm afternoon near the end of spring, Russ and I drove out to the Veterans Cemetery together. The headstone is simple. Staff Sergeant Daniel A. Foster. 1980 to 2006. Beloved father and soldier. Russ laid his hand flat on the top of the stone for a second. I kept my word, brother, he said, low. Took me 20 years to get there. But I kept it. I put my hand next to his on the warm granite. I'm exactly who you hoped I'd be, Dad, I said. I promise you that. We stood there a while. The wind came through the trees and somewhere off across the field a mockingbird was running through every song it knew. After a long quiet, Russ said, he'd be proud of you, Reagan. Not just for getting your money back. Not just for standing up to your mother. For who you are. For deciding to spend your life pulling people out of the worst moment of theirs, instead of letting the worst moment of yours turn you mean. I had help, I said. Thank you, Russ. For keeping your promise. For watching over me when nobody else would. For giving me my father back. Russ shook his head. It stopped being a promise a long time ago, kiddo, he said. It's just family now. Family. Real family. Not the kind you're born into, the kind that shows up. The kind that answers the phone. The kind that drives $94,000 and 20 years of promises straight into a hospital room to find a stranger's daughter and make sure she knows she was never, ever alone. I think about that bathroom floor sometimes. 2:14 in the morning, 17 calls, a phone that just rang and rang. For a long time, that was going to be the saddest story of my life, the night I found out exactly where I ranked in my own family. But it's not the saddest story anymore. It turned into the night that finally pulled the truth up out of the ground. Because a man I'd never met had been keeping a deathbed promise in the dark for 20 years, just waiting for the moment I'd need him. My mother spent 2 decades trying to erase my father and bury what she'd done. And in the end, the harder she pushed it all down, the more certain it was to come back up, louder, and in front of everyone. They told me I was too dramatic. Too sensitive. Too much. They told me my father never even had a name for me. They were wrong about every single thing. And the proof of it is hanging around my neck, and folded up in my wallet, and stamped into a plaque with his name on it, and flying around in a helicopter every time I clock in to go pull a stranger out of their worst night. So let me say this last part to whoever needs it. If you have ever been the scapegoat, the one who was always wrong, always too sensitive, always the problem, I need you to hear me. Your version of what happened is real. Your pain is real. And you are not required to keep accepting mistreatment just because it comes from people who share your blood. Setting a boundary isn't cruel. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. And sometimes the family you choose turns out to be far stronger than the one you were born into. If you've ever been the one who called, and nobody came, type the words I called down in the comments. I want to see you. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not as alone as somebody once made you feel. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button, and subscribe so the next one finds its way to you. And wherever you are right now, whatever they called you, go be exactly who you want to be. Don't ask anybody's permission. Somebody's proud of you. Even if you can't see them. I promise.